I don't know if I could forgive somebody the way he's been able to forgive me.
I knew the only way I was going to get past it was to forgive him. And that is a huge undertaking.
This is the old neighborhood where I grew up. East San Gabriel Valley, suburbs of Los Angeles, California. And of course, in the late 60s and early 1970s, this was, you know, Wonderland, I guess. There was always something going on. There was always kids coming over to someone's house, you know, sleepovers. Very, very Anglo community, not that much diversity.
I grew up in Northern California, a very small town, just outside of San Francisco. It was a very strict household in the sense of religion. We do this on Fridays, this on Saturdays, this on Sundays. We went to church every day because, of course, went to Catholic school.
I had always felt like I was, I don't know, on the outside. I didn't really fit in.
You know, I wouldn't say I hated girls, but I had absolutely zero interest in them. The bullying, it didn't, you know, I couldn't tell if it was because they really knew what my sexuality was, or if it was I was the tiniest kid in the class and the easiest target.
Regarding racial issues, I wouldn't say that it was a blatant sort of thing. It was very subtle. What I can tell you is that once my brother was shot by an African American, my perception was if a person is black, they are willing to attack me. And so there was that fear.
My mother asked the question of why do you think that out of all the kids in the class, why are they picking on you? I said, well, it's obvious they're picking on me because I'm gay. And she's like, no child of mine will live in this house if they choose to live in sin. And then she physically drags me across the floor and throws me out.
My very first hardcore punk rock show. There's something in the air. There was anger. There was fear. And for me, the violence made me feel big. It's the only way I could explain it. It made me feel elated. It was like a drug for me. The adrenaline rush that's involved is like a drug.
I was picked up one night for being out after curfew in San Francisco. After weeks of jumping in and out of cars and being repeatedly victimized as a 13-year-old, I just wanted to go home. My mom no longer wants anything to do with me, and she said, "Fuck you, you little faggot." And she took her hand and smacked me so hard I went across the floor. And that's when I knew that it was completely done.
The people that I gravitated towards were called Nazi punks. Tuesday nights, we're gonna go to the Starwood and we're gonna get in a fight with whoever. And then the next day, we're supposed to go to school. when we were on the rampage, you stood a very good chance of getting hurt.
I remember arriving in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. I was just like, oh my God, this is gonna be great. But unfortunately, the daily routines became the same as they were in San Francisco. Hustling and selling my body was no longer this terrible, awful victimization. It was a means to an end. But I always had this little, like, I'm going to make it because I'm still going to prove her wrong.
That evening was more violent than usual.
At first glance, we saw the Mohawks. We thought, well, whatever, it's just punk rockers.
We had gotten out of the club earlier, and we stopped 2 or 3 times simply to get out of the car and beat somebody up. So we're at a heightened level of aggression. We were across the street from Okie Dogs.
This hamburger stand was the Okie Dog. Across the street, directly across the street is where I heard them yell.
Look, there they are again. The faggots. Let's go kill the faggots.
As they were chasing me, I was trying to make it out as quickly as I could. I was unaware that there were several coming from the other direction. And as I get to the end of the alley and I can see them coming, I froze. I literally froze.
I turned and I saw that the rest of the people that I was with were kicking somebody on the ground.
They started punching me first, then kicking me as hard as they could in order to get me down to the ground.
I saw that he was still moving, and I said something to the effect of, "What's wrong with you guys? You know, don't you know how to put a boot in?"
I remember looking into that face. I remember looking at that Mohawk in those eyes.
I kicked him in the forehead, and he was out.
In those last moments of looking up and watching these 14 guys with razor blades glued to the front of their boots, high-fiving each other, and they were congratulating each other. They believed with everything that was within them that they had accomplished the goal of killing that kid in the alley who had never spoken to them, had never said anything to them. The words and what I saw were far more painful throughout my life than the boots and the blades.
And we turned up the music, and we drove back to the suburbs. I will tell you, it was a long drive. It seemed like a very long drive, and I think all of us were sort of internalizing and processing what had happened. So, you know, I went through most of my life thinking that I had killed this person, or at least not knowing. Every facet of my life had something to do with the white power movement. If you want to call it an epiphany or the enlightenment or the time when I realized just how much damage I could be doing. We were in the grocery store and he said, "Look, Daddy, there's a big black," and he blurted out the N-word. And for me, I started to feel that it wasn't making me feel good inside anymore. It didn't make me feel like I was in charge or that I had control or power or anything like that. And I was shamed. The violence and being a part of that stuff was not working anymore, just like a drug. You know, when does the alcohol stop making you feel better? When does the heroin stop making you feel good? You know, there does become a time when it doesn't work.
In 1998, Matthew Shepard is beaten, dies 7 days later. At first, I didn't know why I felt so connected to his story. And when he died and I sat there to think about it, I realized why. Is that I lived that night. This kid didn't, and his voice was silenced forever. Guys, I want to welcome you to the museum. I'm going to help you guys go through security and get you started with your tour guide. I'm one of the managers, Matthew, but I am not your tour guide. Your tour guide is going to meet you in a moment. Ella and your group will come through the front, and we're going to go straight up the ramp. One of the things that I think is most powerful that the museum has is the power of personal testimony. People who have lived through something or been a part of something are able to share that experience firsthand, which adds to the exhibits.
You could make it a better world.
We'll just join them wherever you are. Perfect. Got it. When I became manager for the museum, one of the speakers was Tim Zoll. And I remember looking at the sheets before I had even seen a picture of him, and it said former white supremacist. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
And there was a specific school group that Matthew wanted some advice on.
We're talking about the school. We're talking about the kids for about 5 minutes.
Matthew asked me, oh, so how did you get out of the movement and stuff like that, and where did you grow up? Came into the conversation, and we started to talk about our backgrounds. And
I was a street kid. I grew up on the streets of Hollywood, or just outside of West Hollywood. And he's like,
that I used to hang out in the streets in Hollywood, and I told him that I used to hang out at Okie Dogs, for example.
I had a 16-inch mohawk, I believe is what he said to me. And there was a moment where I just took a deep breath. Like, there was just a flash back to the alley and just looking back up at that mohawk.
And he said, oh, yeah, I used to hang out at Okie Dogs, too. And I said, yeah.
I'm like, what do you remember about Okie Dogs? Why did you guys used to hang out there? And he stiffened up.
I stopped hanging out there, as a matter of fact, because one night it got really, really violent, and I just didn't feel comfortable with going back.
And I just looked directly at him, and I said, you know who you're sitting across from, don't you? And he said, I knew it before you did.
And I think it's at that time, rather than saying, oh, I'm sorry, or whatever. I didn't know how to handle it. And I don't think he did either. And we both went our separate ways.
There was a numbness. I think every emotion in my body shut off. I was angry, and I was thinking what I was gonna do to him. And that thought of what I was gonna do to another person actually scared the crap out of me, because it's not who I am. I'm not saying I don't get frustrated or I get angry, but not to that extent of wanting to cause somebody that type of harm.
I attempted to come up with excuses. I attempted to say, oh, I wasn't there, or I was drunk, or making up excuses, trying to blame the victim, which unfortunately is something that is very common, is to blame the victim.
I think he wanted to be forgiven. I think the first part of me trying to forgive him, or the first part of me trying to take those steps towards forgiveness was, no, because it's what you're looking for.
After the Museum of Tolerance found out about the situation, they wanted us to try to do a presentation together.
I want to welcome you guys to Hate to Hope. My name is Matthew, this is Tim. Our presentation evolves because Tim and I evolve, and so does the process of forgiveness evolves.
By getting up here and talking about this and letting other people know that it can be done, I didn't want to do it originally. I did not want to do it at all.
I don't know why I agreed. I wasn't comfortable being around Tim. I wasn't exactly thrilled to publicly share a story that I've denied at that point for 26 years.
Education, that's a lot.
I really could not believe that I was sitting across from one of 14 guys who believed that they had killed me, or at least attempted to do that. It was just so odd. There still wasn't this intention to forgive him, I just thought maybe there's more to the story that could help me if I learned it.
All I can do to prove to somebody that I am a different person today is by the way that I live my life. And I watched him get to know me. I watched him learn to trust me.
The evening that this attack took place, it was my boot that knocked Matthew unconscious. Dealing with that shame and that guilt is something that does reoccur from time to time. Not every day.
I had to understand each step that I took. I realized he wasn't going to give it to me. I had to get it on my own, and it was going to be through this process. I could tell people that I didn't care what they thought of me. I don't care what you think of my sexuality, but I didn't mean it, because of course I cared, and it affected me. I didn't realize that until the end, that one of the gifts of forgiveness was that I would be able to say that, and when I say it, it comes from here. Is that it's very hard, is one...
I started to dwell on this question of, have I forgiven myself? Have I forgiven myself? Because I felt guilty. I did not feel that I had forgiven myself. I don't think truly, and I had this inner struggle, this just being torn up inside. What started the whole meditation thing was I was going through some guilt. I wasn't at peace with myself, and a very good friend of mine suggested I started meditating. And at first I was very apprehensive. I said, you know, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not into that kind of stuff, and that's kind of weird. You know, I consider myself a Christian, so I'm not going to get involved with that kind of stuff. He said, well, just give it a try. It was very strange because one of the main ways of forgiving myself is by meditating. It's definitely part of my process. Every time that Matthew tells this story, of course, I have to relive it too. When I initially apologized, it was in front of people, which was a safe situation. For whatever reason, we just haven't. This is our therapy. And I was only 17, and I this, and I that, and it became about me. It all became about me, which is selfish.
We don't know. Tim and I have not known in 6 or 7 years whose lives we have changed. It's not, we don't know.
I'd like to commend you because I have a son who's gay. He had a problem coming out with me. And he says, well, Dad, he goes, I was always afraid because I never thought that you would accept it. And I said, son, I said, you know, I don't know what kind of person does that to their kid.
In that beginning journey of forgiving Tim, you know, I also had to look back, and maybe this is why the process took so long, is because I also had to think about, would it be possible to forgive my mom? It was not as hard as I was making it. I needed to forgive her for what happened. And the only element I didn't have from her was an understanding of why she had done what she did. And sitting down and thinking that really, truly my mom, I can't judge her because I don't know what fractured life she came from. She never shared her story. And I didn't walk in her shoes.
Because you don't know what the other person's been through. You don't know what tools that they were given growing up. And at the end of the day, what does that do? To hold that resentment and that anger and that hatred towards another person just eats you up. It's like a cancer inside.
In the past year, I was going through the illness of my partner, brain cancer. And the first person that was there was Tim. As difficult as it is to watch someone pass away, it was made more comforting having Tim there to let me know that it would be okay. And he sort of is like that family that I couldn't reach out to at that moment.
You have to look at both the perpetrator and the victim as human beings and being able to change. Because if I can change, anybody can change.
I trust him with my life. And this is a guy who was willing to take my life. And I don't think I would have gotten to this point or this relationship I have with him had I not been able to truly forgive him.